Hey everybody, movie reviewer next door here, and I'm back with another movie review. And this time, I'm reviewing Next. This is a 2007 action sci-fi thriller film. I think I said 2007 already. Still a rough day. Directed by Lee Tamahori, and it stars Nicolas Cage, Julianne Moore, Jessica Biel, and Thomas Kretschmann. In this film, Las Vegas showroom magician Chris Johnson has a secret which torments him. He can see a few minutes into the future. Sick of the examinations he underwent as a child and the interests of the government and medical establishment in his power, he lies low under an assumed name in Vegas, performing cheap tricks living off small-time gambling winnings. But when a terrorist group threatens to detonate a nuclear device in Los Angeles, government agent Callie Ferris must use all her wiles to capture Chris and convince him to help her stop the cataclysm. So, what did I think of Next? Well, this is a film I've seen multiple times. I've now I do still have my same issues with the film, but I do still enjoy it. It is a film that I feel with a few changes could have been fantastic, to be honest. To be perfectly honest, I love um this premise, but I do have my share of issues with it that do really bring it down. But let me get to the cast. Nicolas Cage plays Chris Johnson slash Frank Cadillac. He is a magician, and he has an uncanny ability to see 2 minutes into the future, but only when it affects him. Um, I really like him in this role. I think he does a better performance in this than 8mm and Kick-Ass. He's still good in Kick-Ass. He's not in it enough, but his performance in Kick-Ass was fine. I have no real issue with it. It's just that I think here he has a good mixture of serious and silly, and it really works for his whole acting style. And yeah, I really enjoyed watching him in this. Julianne Moore plays Callie Ferris, a government agent trying to get him. She's one of my issues with the film. She really does not do a good job at all. This is one of her worst performances I've seen. I have not seen a ton of her performances, but I've really liked her in other things. She was good in the Carrie remake. She was good in Hannibal, in a similar role to this. Um, she was good in Crazy Stupid Love, Single Man. She's been she's been good in like everything I've seen her in, and this is like a big outlier for me. She's trying to do like a gruff, like badass, like a badass government agent thing, and it just doesn't work. She felt more independent feeling in Hannibal, and even in Hannibal I had my own issues with that film, but here it just does not work. It feels like she's trying a bit too hard and she's putting on a really bad voice. She looks pissed off all the time, which I guess that means you're serious. But yeah, Jessica Biel plays Liz Cooper, a girl that Chris Johnson feels like an attachment to, even though he never met her. She does a decent job. I don't think she's one of the best actresses around, but she gives a nice enough performance that I cared about her character. And Thomas Kretschmann plays Mr. Smith. He's the villain. There's not really much to him. Thomas Kretschmann plays evil Nazis all the time, so whatever. But yeah, this film is not going for high art. It has a premise. Man can see 2 minutes into the future, but only when anything affects him. Um, then he meets this woman where he can see farther into the future and only when it concerns her. Um, this is based on a Philip K. Dick story called The Golden Man, I think. A lot of people keep saying, "Oh, the movie's nothing like the book." Of course, they're gonna say that, or movie's not nothing like the short story. That's always gonna be an argument. But here, I don't. I've never read the story. I don't know really what the story is about. I'm guessing the main premise is what the story is about, mainly, and all the stuff used to actually make a coherent story is not because people are petty. Um, but yeah, like I said, this film is really easy to watch. I can give that right off the bat. It is not a film that, and I'm not saying it's like turn off your brain, because there are parts that I'm like, oh, they actually thought this through. It's like well written in a lot of places, especially like staged. I'll explain that when I talk about the action sequences. But the whole premise of you can see 2 minutes in the future, you have to keep that in mind throughout the film, because this film does take its premise to the next level, and it actually like uses its premise. It's just a shame that there's other things in the film that kind of derail this being anything more than good for me, because I do think it's a good film. I think it's worth a watch, at least to see how the premise is executed. And I'm kind of gonna have to make this a spoiler review. Now, I'll list in here what the I'll list here when the spoilers come up, but I am gonna have to talk about this because it is. There's a couple things that really kind of annoy me about this movie. First off, again, Julianne Moore. I love Julianne Moore. I do. She's from my state. She's from North Carolina. She's from Fayetteville, I think. Like, right here, just a list of movies she's been in: Children of Men, Crazy Stupid Love, Big Lebowski, Boogie Nights, Magnolia, Kingsman: The Golden Circle, Hannibal, The Lost World: Jurassic Park, The Woman in the Window, The Fugitive, A Single Man, Don John. All of these movies, she has to be better than in this, because here in the behind the scenes, she seems like she's super into this movie. Because you can usually tell in behind the scenes where, like, with Robert De Niro in, like, Limitless, he seems like it was just a paycheck movie. He's like, yeah, the director's got a lot of, yeah. And it gets really annoying because you can very much tell that he doesn't want to be there. With Julianne Moore, she seems really invested in this role. She seems to like the role she plays. She thinks she did a good job. And I hate to be mean, but she didn't. Again, it's, how do I compare this? It reminded me of Ronda Rousey in Mortal Kombat 11, where she played Sonya Blade, and they had chosen not to bring back the voice actress that had been playing Sonya all this time, who actually does a really good job at playing Sonya, rather to get a name that no one cared to see in a video game ever, because no one gives a fuck about Ronda Rousey and her stupid fucking face mole. Um, but this performance reminded me of that because she has this fake gruffness where she'll like grit her teeth certain times where she's like, "What did you see?" And it's like, just God. Like I would have rather she played like kind of a good cop, bad cop, and maybe there would have been a bit more of a good performance, but here Julianne Moore just like it feels like she's just pissed off all the time, and that doesn't make a strong female character to just have them be pissed off all the time. Second issue with this film, and it's an issue I have with a lot of Lee Tamahori's films. I like him as a director, all right. I, but, but like, just naming a couple movies off the bat that have terrible CGI that he made. Triple X State of the Union, Next, Die Another Day, and Along Came a Spider. I'm gonna name a couple effect scenes. The Triple X one, I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was a helicopter or something. There's a lot of bad CGI in that film. I can't remember every moment. I just know a lot of people hate that movie, like a lot. But Along Came a Spider, the opening scene. I don't remember much CGI in the film other than that, but in the opening scene, there's a really bad bit of CGI where a car, like a woman is like undercover and she's like trying to take this guy in, and she accidentally ends up shooting him, and then he like crashes the car and it's like flying everywhere and it looks like garbage. In Next, There's an effect where a train hits the car and the camera keeps spinning around the train. Um, there's a bit where there's stuff falling down a hill after characters and it really looks out of place. A lot of it looks kind of floaty. There's the bit at the end with the explosion that looks really bad. And Die Another Day, there's multiple effects that look really weird. Other than the first scene in Die Another Day, there's like a ton of CGI and way more CGI than ever needed to be in a James Bond film. But in Next specifically, it does kind of harm the tension of some of the action scenes. Because a lot of the action scenes have to do with knowing what is going to happen next. Because sometimes you get to see when Chris Johnson like looks into the future and sees what's going to happen. Sometimes you don't, and it's really mostly just to show that, oh, he's thought all of these plans out and he knows exactly what to do now because he's thought it all up in his head. And I like that. It's an interesting idea, and it's very well shown in the film. Um, and yeah, I like a lot of the action scenes, even with the crummy CGI. It's or with the crummy CG, it's still I like the concept enough, and I like the execution. I like what Cage does with this. He really plays it really kind of aloof, and yeah, they were exciting and fun chase and action sequences, and I was involved in them. Um, the third issue, well, I'm gonna say spoiler starting right here. Um, if you've already seen the film or you don't care about being spoiled, I mean, whatever. Um, but I just like to give people heads up. Um, but yeah, spoiler is that. Sorry. The third issue I have with this film is with the ending. Now, in order to explain what my issue is, I do have to kind of spoil how the film ends. So, if the only people here are people who've seen the film or um, don't care about being spoiled, the film ends after Cage has gone, or Chris has gone through all these different things. There's a lot of really cool sequences where his body like branches off and he's like thinking about multiple pathways at once. He's trying to clear every path for everybody to make sure everything's safe for them to cross. He's helping the FBI. And at the end, he gets it to the point where the FBI can shoot the detonator out of Mr. Smith or whatever his name's hand and then shoot him in the head. And then they have Jessica Biel, but they still have the issue of the bomb or whatever. And then Chris gets to the top and he says, I made a mistake. And then um, Julianne Moore is like, what? And he said, I made a miscalculation. It's happening. It's happening when? It's happening now. They duck down. There's a big explosion. The ship that they're on gets destroyed. Some piece of debris flies into the camera. And then it cuts back to like near half of the movie where Chris Johnson wakes up in bed with Jessica Biel. I've always had an issue with this ending. And it's not how it ends. It ends with him like telling her like keep her out of it so that Jessica's not a part of it so that he can get just specifically focus on the bomb. But it's a really just unsatisfying ending to what I thought was a pretty fun, like sci-fi action thriller. And it does undermine a lot of the things that I would say are really good about the film, like the pace and the creativity of the action scenes and all that. It just kind of felt a bit hollow. It felt like they didn't have enough footage to end the film. Because if I were to do a movie like this, I'd have it be like that and then actually show what happens because the film ends with Chris getting into the car with Julianne Moore's character and then the film just cuts to credits, which I've always hated. I've always felt like, wait, is that it? That's really how the movie ends? And yeah, I can see a lot of people being disappointed and disowning the film, saying it's a piece of shit after that, or saying that it's a meditative ending. You interpret what happens. That type of bullshit. But I'm not like that. I find it to be a pretty poor ending to the film. And overall, I do still think it's a good film, but it isn't without its flaws, for sure. Um, but yeah, uh, I do like the film. I do think it has interesting things. The whole idea of him like going through different scenarios in order to get it right is an interesting thing. You're not watching this because of really the stakes, I guess. You're watching it more for the premise and how creatively he's going to solve the situations. A highlight being him escaping the casino police or the guards at the casino with his powers. But yeah, I don't think they should do a sequel to this. I think they should just leave it alone if they try to do a sequel, they want more and more movies. And that'll be annoying. But yeah, I do like the film. I do find it very easy to watch, but still, I do think that the way it ends and all this stuff does kind of put a damper on what this film could have been. But yeah, that was my review of Next. If you liked the film, if you didn't like the film, let me know in the comments. If you have any suggestions on what I should watch next, put them in the comments there. And movie reviewer next door